Great. Let's begin. And as she sat in silence, in this silence, there came a low tap at the door, such a low, humble one, that she did not at first hear it, and indeed was not roused until the door was timidly pushed open, and a poor tear-smeared face appeared peeping round it. It was Becky's face, and Becky had been crying furtively for hours and rubbing her eyes with her kitchen apron until she looked strange indeed. "Oh, miss," she sighed under her breath, "might I, would you allow me just to come?" Sarah lifted her head and looked at her. She tried to begin a smile, and somehow she couldn't. Suddenly, and it was all through the loving mournfulness of Becky's streaming eyes. Her face, her face looked more like a child's, not so much too old for her years. She held out her hand and gave a little sob. "Oh, Becky," she said, "I told you we were just the same. Only two little girls. Just two little girls. You see how true it is. There's no difference now. I'm not a princess anymore." Becky ran to her and caught her hand and hugged it to her breast, kneeling beside her and sobbing with love and pain. "Yes, miss, you are," she cried, and her words were all broken. Whatever happened to you, whatever happened to you, you'd be a princess all the same. Nothing could make you nothing different. In the in the attic, I think it's attic. We checked yesterday. Yes, attic. So we don't need to put the put here. In the attic, the first night she spent in her attic was a thing Sarah never forgot. During its passing, during its passing, she left through a wild and childlike war of which she never spoke to anyone about her. And childlike war, war,
Wow.
During its passing, she lived through a wild and childlike woe of which she never spoke to anyone about her. There was no one who would have understood. It was indeed well for her that as she lay awake in the darkness, her mind was forcibly did now and then by the strangeness of her surroundings. It was perhaps wherefore reminded by her small body of material things. If this had been so, the anguish of her young mind might have been too great for a child to bear. Anguish. anguish, 痛苦
anguish,
the anguish of her. If this had not been so, the anguish of her young man might have been too great for a child to bear. But really, while the night was passing, she scarcely knew that she had a body at all, or remember any other things than one. The first night she spent in her attic was a thing Sarah never forgot. During its passing, she lived through a wild and childish-like war of which she never spoke to anyone about her. There was no one who would have understood. It was indeed well for her that as she lay awake in the darkness, her mind was forcibly distressed now and then by the strangeness of her surroundings. It was perhaps well for her that she was reminded by her small body of material things. It was perhaps well for her that she was reminded by her small body of material things. If this had not been so, the anguish of her young man might have been too great for a child to bear. But really, while the night was passing, she scarcely knew that she had a body at all, or remember any other thing than one. My papa is dead. She kept whispering to herself, my papa is dead. It was not until long after that she realized that her bed had been so hard that she turned over and over in it to find a place to rest. Turned, turned over and she turned over and over in it to find a place to rest. That the darkness seemed more intense than any she had ever known, and that the wind howled over the roof among the chimney, like something which wailed, wailed, wailed aloud. Then there was something worse. This was certain scuffling and scratching and squeaking in the wall. There was a certain scuffling and scratching and squeaking in the walls, and behind the skirting boards, she knew what they meant, because Becky had described them. They meant rats and mice, who were either fighting with each other or playing each other. Once or twice she even heard sharp-toed feet, sharp-toed feet scurrying across, scaring, scurrying, scurrying. 急匆匆的 yes, scurrying. Scurrying across the floor. Sharp-toed feet, scurrying across the floor, and she remembered in those she recalled things that when first she heard them, she started up in bed and sat trembling, and when she lay down again, covering her head with the bed clothes. The change in her life did not come about gradually, but was made all at once. The change in her life did not come about gradually, come about, did not come about gradually, but was made all at once. She must begin as she is to go on, Miss Minchin. She must begin as she is to go on. She must be taught at once what she is to expect. Marty had left the horse the next morning. The sleeps Sarah caught of her sitting room. The sleeps Sarah caught of her sitting room as she passed its open door. As she passed its open door, showed her that everything had been changed. Her ornament and luxury, her ornament and luxuries had been removed, and a bed had been placed in a corner to transfer into a new pupil's bedroom. When she went down to breakfast, she saw that her seat at Miss Minchin's side was occupied by Lavinia, and Miss Minchin spoke to her coldly. "You will begin your new duties, Sarah," she said, "by taking your seat with the young children. You must keep them quiet and see that they behave well and do not waste their food. You ought to have been done earlier. Lottie has already upset her tea." That was the beginning, and from day to day, the duties given to her were added to. She taught the younger children French and heard their other lessons, and these were the least of her labors. It was found that she could be made use of in numberless directions. She could be sent on, on errands at any time and in all weathers. She could be told to do things other people neglected. The cook and the housemaid took their tone from Miss Minchin, and rather enjoyed order about the young one, who had been made so much fuss. They were not servants of the best class, and had neither good manners nor good tempers, and it was frequently convenient to have had and someone on whom blame could be laid. During the first month or two, Sarah thought that her willingness to do things as well as she could, and her silence under reproof might soften those who drove her so hard. In her proud little heart, she wanted them to see that she was trying to earn her living and not accepting charity. But the time came when she saw that no one was softened at all, and the more willing she was to do as she was told, the more domineering, and exacting careless housemaids became, and the more ready a scolding cook was to blame her, the more domineering. Yeah. And the more willing the more willing She was to do so. She was to do as she was told. The more domineering, domineer 控制的意思 ，domineering 刚愎词用的，生气凌人，生气凌人的，and exacting。exacting 就是严格的 exacting careless homemaid became, and the more ready a scolding cook was to blame her. If she had been older, Miss Minchin would have given her the bigger girls to teach and save money by dismissing an instructress. But while she remained and looked like a child, she could be made more useful as a sort of little superior, superior errand girl and maid of all work. An ordinary errand boy would not have been so clever and reliable. An ordinary errand would not have been so clever and reliable. Sarah could be trusted with difficult commissions and complicated messages. She could even go and pay bills, and she combined with this the ability to dust a room well and to set things in order. Her own lessons became things of the past. She was taught nothing, and only after long and busy days spent in running here and there at everybody's orders was her grudgingly allowed to go into the uh, deserted schoolroom with a pair of old books and study alone at night. Grudging. She grudgingly, at everyone's order,
grudging,
grudging. She was taught nothing, and only after long and busy days spent in running here and there at everybody's order was she grudgingly allowed to go into the deserted schoolroom with a pair of old books and study alone at night. If I do not remind myself of the things I have learned, perhaps I may forget them, she said to herself. I'm almost a scullery maid, and if I am a scullery maid who knows nothing, I shall be like poor Becky. I wonder if I could quit. Forget, and begin to drop my heels and not remember the Henry the English had 6 wives. One of the most curious things in her new existence was her changed position among the pupils. Instead being a sort of small royal personage among them. Instead of being a sort of small royal personage among them, she no longer seemed to be one of their member at all. She was kept so constantly at work that she scarcely ever had an opportunity of speaking to any of them, and she could not avoid seeing that Miss Minchin she should live a life apart from that of the occup- occupant of the schoolroom. I will not have her forming in intimacy and talking to the other children, they decide. In intimacy, 亲近
Intimacy.
intimacy. I will not have her forming intimacy and talking to the other children. That they decide. Girls like a grievance, and if she began to tell herself, she will become an ill-used heroine, and the parents will be given a wrong impression. It is better that she should live a separate life, one suited to her one suited to her circumstance. I'm giving her a home, and this is more than she has any right to expect from me. Sarah did not expect much and was far too proud to try to continue to be intimate with girls who evidently felt rather awkward and uncertain about her. The fact was that Miss Minchin's pupils were a set of dull, matter-of-fact young people. They were accustomed to being rich and comfortable, and as Sarah's frocks grew shorter and shabbier and queer looking, and it became an established fact that she wear shoes with holes in them and was sent out to buy groceries and carry them through the streets in a basket on her arm when the cook wanted them in a hurry. They felt rather as if when they spoke to her, they were addressing an underservant. To think that she was the girl with the diamond mine. To think that she was the girl with the diamond mine, Lavinia commanded. She does look an object. And she's queerer than ever. I never liked her much, but I can't bear that way she has now of looking at people without speaking, just as if she was finding them odd. I am, said Sarah promptly when she heard of this. That's what I look at some people for. I like to know about them. I think them over afterward. The truth was that she had saved herself annoyance several times by keeping her eyes on Lavinia, who was quite ready to make mischief, and would have been rather pleased to have made it for the extra pupil. Sarah never made any mischief herself, or interfered with anyone. She worked like a drudge, uh, 苦工 drudge. Yes, I think it's drudge. Yes, drudge. Great. Mischief. Mischief.
Mischief.
mischief 损害顽皮淘气 to make mischief. Who was quite ready to make mischief? Make mischief. 损害恶作剧危害 Sarah never made any mischief herself, or interfered with anyone. She walked like a drudge. She tramped through the wide street, carrying parcels and baskets. She labored with the childish inattention. She labored with the childish inattention of the little one's French lessons. As she became shabbier and more fallen-looking, she had better take her meals downstairs. 荒凉
Forlorn.
long 凄凉的荒凉的 凄凉的孤立无援的 more forlorn looking, she was told that she had better take her meal downstairs. She was treated as if she was nobody's concern, and her heart grew proud and sore. Grew proud and sore. 痛苦的身上。身上性的恼火的 But she never told anyone what she felt. Soldiers don't complain, she would say between her small shut teeth. I'm not going to do it. I will pretend this is part of a war. Soldiers don't complain, she would say between her small shut teeth. I'm not going to do it. I will pretend this is part of a war. But there were hours when her child heart might almost have broken with loneliness, but for three people. But there were hours when her child heart might almost have broken with loneliness, but for three people. The first, it must be owned, was Becky, just Becky. Throughout all that